Hello, I'm Joanne Bjornson, Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Leidos, and Executive Sponsor of APIN, our Asian Pacific Islander Network Employee Resource Group. I want to welcome you to the SASE Professional Webinar Series hosted by Leidos. We commend all of you for joining today's webinar and taking the important step in investing in your professional growth. At Leidos, we are proud of our diverse population of talented professionals, including our strong Asian Pacific Islander community. It is only through the diverse perspectives of our employees that we are able to differentiate ourselves and build on our over 50 years of history in delivering critical solutions to our customers' most demanding challenges. By fostering a sense of belonging, welcoming all perspectives and contributions, and providing equal access to opportunities and resources for everyone, Leidos promotes an environment where inclusion is part of the fabric of our culture. Again, welcome, and we hope you enjoy today's session.
Scene 5, take 1, Mark.
Inclusion is
access to opportunities,
unique perspectives. Inclusion is
to a team.
Access to opportunities,
unique perspectives. Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
Access to opportunities,
unique perspectives.
To achieve.
Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
That respects our differences.
Access to opportunities,
and embracing our
unique perspectives.
To achieve.
So let's go from the top.
Inclusion is
belonging
to a team.
That respects our differences.
having equal access to opportunities,
and embracing our
unique perspectives.
To achieve.
greatness.
I like it.
Inclusion
Fuels innovation.
Inclusion is
all
all
of
of us.
Inclusion
Is Leidos.
Hey everybody, it's Parag Matawar. I'm the Director of Professional Programs here at SASE Pro. Jessica, can you give me a thumbs up if the video looks good, if the sharing looks good? Thank you so much. And thank you for the almost 80 some people who are in the room so far. We had over 200 people register, and so this we're super happy about the participation today so far. But let me get on with the show here. For many of you, I think this might be the first time that you are interacting with SASE Pro, so I want to give you a little bit of background of who we are, why we are, what we do, how we do it, and all that good stuff. So first off, the problem. Asians are nearly 50% less likely to get promoted into middle management levels versus our Caucasian counterparts, and this is an Asian leadership gap. And so put quickly, that's really what we're focused on at SASE Pro. Our research shows that it's 4 common factors that are at the root of this: lack of political and organizational savvy, the cultural deference to authority, ineffective communication and influencing skills, and an aversion to risk-taking. But to even tackle those challenges, or even tackle those issues, we have 3 basic challenges. One is awareness, and now by virtue of you just now having listened to me, awareness hopefully is not as much of a challenge for more and more people as they participate with our programs. But the other piece is what to do with it, and what we found is that training with the context, the cultural context is key. Providing that leadership development training to focus on cultural agility. We do that here at SASE Pro, largely, using Asian professional trainers for our predominantly Asian audience. And the realization that Asian development is often a lower priority for many companies. And so with that, our solution is to pull together, now actually when I created this slide, it was 120 people. Now it's well over 200 that are part of our ERG leadership network from over 90 companies to create programs for the benefit of all of us. One of those programs that we offer year-round around is this webinar series. It's a free series. If anybody who is listening paid, then we need to figure out who you sent that money to, because it was not us. And we feature our training partners or interviews with executives. It is a sponsored series, which allows us to provide this for free. So special thanks to Leidos for that support. Roughly once a month, and the recordings will be up on the website for at least 2 months, potentially longer depending on the session. And you can stay informed either by the website, but the easiest place, quite honestly, is on our LinkedIn page. But enough of that. I want to get on with the show and welcome our new friend, Dr. Lynn Tran, to talk about an introduction to a brain-based lifestyle. And let me switch over to her slides and let her take over.
Thank you. Wow. I am so grateful to be here and to be able to speak to all the different participants today at SASE. And again, thank you to our sponsor to really make this available. And so I'm really, truly grateful. So today, obviously, the topic is brain-based lifestyle to greater mental resilience. And so when we talk about mental resilience, that's going to be a term that I use interchangeably to mental health and mental wellness. So I jump around with these. Obviously, they each have their own different types of definition to it. And we'll get into a little bit of that today as well too. Let's move to the next slide, and Parag is going to help me direct. So so what we're going to be doing today is the scope of the talk. I just want to walk through that with you, is exploring why mental health matters, right? And then we're going to do a fun little exercise for yourself to discover your wheel of mental wellness. And then we're going to move on to talk about where mental health or where mental wellness truly begins. And as you can probably guess from the title, it begins with the brain. So you're going to get an A for that already. And then number 4, we're really going to talk about the unseen factors of brain health to truly consider. And this is where I bring in some of my expertise, and having you, really the idea is to introduce a different perspective to looking at our health and understand that it's highly complex and interrelated. And hopefully this gets you to, by the end of the talk, to have some exercises to do. I have a fun opportunity for you at the end for you to join on as well too, so that we can continue to dig deeper into this topic. And on top of that, you get to go and do your own digging and really find the right team members to support your own personal health. Now, let's move on to the next slide. I want to put the premise on this. Today, yes, we talk about mental health, and the biggest thing to think about as we're going through this talk, and especially as Parag was giving the introduction, is we want to make change. You want to make a change in your company. You want to see change in this. And without your health, it's harder for you to be able to do the things that you want to do for your career, for your family, for the things you love. And so being able to focus on you is, I think, a little bit of a challenge as an Asian American, where I got to take care of everything outside. The idea is being able to shift the perspective and think about your own self-care, your own personal well-being. And I remember growing up, and my mom used to think, I don't want to be selfish and take time for me. I need to take care of you. And it's like, no, be selfish. This is the time to think about being self-centered. And self-centered is sometimes, or selfish, maybe it has that negative connotation, but today think about it as you're the center of your universe. And we're going to explore that a little bit more too. You're the center of your universe. And if you are not grounded, what is everything else going to look like? It's going to change the trajectory of your life. And that's a big deal. So I'm super excited to share more about that. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm a brain-based chiropractor in Denver, Colorado. I run a private practice with my husband called Wild and Precious Optimal Living. Wild and Precious Optimal Living comes from one of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver, The Summer Days. And in the end of this poem, she asks this really poignant question that I discovered when I was in my early 20s and deep in my depression and eating disorder, a lot of different mental health things that I was really, truly, secretly struggling with. And this question was, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And it was so moving for me that obviously I had to tie it in some way into my practice, hence the name for my practice. Outside of that, I've been a yoga and meditation facilitator for about 10 plus years. Before that, I worked in corporate America with Coors Brewing Company. And so a lot of my personal journey took me to where I am. And I think that, I always think that regardless if we're meeting through Zoom or in person, there's a reason for it. There's a time, there's a reason why we're connecting. And even if it's brief, I hope that this helps to shed some light as you continue in your own career journey. So let's move on to our first part. Next slide. So I think the chances are you joining this talk, you recognize to some degree that mental health matters. Let's just all agree on that, right? If you can, I'd just like to get an idea through chat for the next few seconds here, get an idea, why does mental health matter to you? If you're okay sharing, just one word or just a short snippet about why this mental health matters. Why does mental health matter to you? Helps me be present and focused. I love that, Parag. And helps me show up better for others in my life. I love that. Overall healthy, drive physical force, enjoy life. Thank you for sharing. Yes, how we show up, inner peace. I love that. Strong body, strong mind, inner peace and happiness, overall well-being. Yes, so already recharge batteries. Yes. Potentially to spread happiness, capped with happy, critical over well-being, overall well-being. So as you are sharing this, I know that you have a chance to check on chat to see how others are experiencing or why mental health matters to you. Some of us, in the deeper aspect, may have experienced someone in their family or friend in their network who's very personal to them that may also struggle with mental health. I am one of those. I have with one of my parents really deeply struggled, and that's really changed our relationship. And, so these things are personal. We've also perhaps lost a loved one from suicide as well too. So the reality can be really, really hard, right? And so it is a conversation that needs to be had. And we're very fortunate in this time and age where there is less stigma to be able to discuss mental health. And today I hope to be able to share that from a different perspective than usually. While therapy and medication even may be playing a role in our health, in addressing mental health, today I get to offer another holistic approach to addressing that. Okay, so great. So I want to be able to address let's move on to the next slide. I want to be able to address, why mental health matters, and maybe we can all align to some of these points. Mental health or mental wellness affects your career satisfaction. So as was pointed out earlier, while we have a great representation in the workforce, even in just, Silicon Valley, even through AAPI individuals, is just showing here that we are the less likely to be promoted to management roles, right? And these challenges have some residual effects. This can be related to some of the negative mental health outcomes, such as depression, anxiety, decreased job satisfaction, increased pressure to perform, and less likelihood of seeking support. And this could also be personally tied to cultural values, depending on your generation of your cultural upbringing as well too. And so next slide. We want to talk about next is the ability to, why it matters is the ability to recognize and destigmatize mental health, which allows you to advocate for yourself. It allows you to advocate as a leader as well too for your team members. And this creates a much more holistic and supported place to be able to perform better, or to feel like we belong, to feel like there's less pressure and you're not alone in the journey. And I found there was a lovely article, which I'm happy to share for those of you who are curious, but it was just an interview of just a sampling of of members that work in corporate America. And this one I felt like was very representative for many of us. When I recall working at Coors, she writes here, a lot of pressure can come from the expectations that we place on ourselves to stem from our parents' backgrounds and struggles. I came from a disadvantaged neighborhood with immigrant parents, so I grew up being taught that as long as I worked hard, that I would be enough. However, now that I'm working professional, I struggled with balancing what I wanted to do with my career, what my parents thought I should be doing with my career, and what I believed my career expected me to deliver. And my mental health has suffered as a result. With my family, being vulnerable was seen as weak-willed. And so when I was struggling, I felt that I couldn't express that to anyone. It's still hard for me to admit to myself and to be able to learn to ask for help. I'm a small business owner now. I am running my own private practice, and it still is a continual everyday journey to be aware of saying, need some help here. I can't do it all. And that's juggling the role of being a mom, the role of being a practitioner that has a number of clients that we are supporting. And there's a big role in leadership that calls upon that. So in your own corporate setting, you are not only are you representing or within your company, you're a leader at home, you're a leader in the hobbies that you have and how you show up. And oftentimes being able to say, I need some support. This is really why mental health matters, is being able to have open conversation and start to see a shift and change and getting the right support within your company. So let's move on to the next slide there. The third one. Mental health affects your ability to be an effective leader and to better advocate for others. I touched upon this already as well too. The last point is without good mental health, leaders can start to negatively impact people around them. So let's just say, would you rather work with someone who, or would you want to jump on a talk today if I'm like, what's up? So let me just tell you, today really sucked already, but I'm going to talk about mental health because, that's what I do. Or would you rather jump on and have me the way I am right now? I feel like I'm pretty good right now. So, but that's the truth though. Like we bounce energies off each other all day. And as a leader, and in my field of chiropractic, there's this thing called entrainment. Entrainment is my energy also will affect my client's energy. If I don't take care of myself as a practitioner, there's going to be an effect in how results will be achieved in the office and with my clients as well too. Now, if I came in and I'm, I know that I'm going to go home and I'm just going to drink, 6 cups or six pints of beer. I don't know. I'm just kind of like giving an example. But then the next day I'm like, yeah, I'm going to roll into work and I'm going to take care of patients. That's going to affect the energy. That's going to affect the quality of what I'm providing. Why have those type of habits, right? And sometimes the reality is we do turn to more, we know certain habits help to alleviate our stress, but maybe there's something more that we can start to hold space for as leaders or even as whatever position that we're at, so that it affects how we work with our colleagues. And in turn, this can better support the next person. And when you're more open, it allows you to notice what else is going on outside of you. It allows you to show more empathy, to show more compassion. It creates relatability. It creates resonance between you, or rapport between you and your colleague and your employee. And to be able to be perceptive, to pay attention to the different nonverbal cues that show up when a person is struggling, and that you can personally reach out and say, hey, I noticed that this is happening, or I noticed you're feeling a little bit tired today. What's going on? These things create trust. And when a person feels it, when you actually say, how are you? They feel it. And that's really coming from a place of holding space and presence, and then being able to be consistent and showing up, right? And so that's where why mental health matters. It starts to, as you can guess, play a role in other aspects and centers of yourself. I'm probably missing a lot of chat things, and I'm not sure. So I just wanted to hold space out there and say that you probably have some really great feedback and questions and Q&A. I am going to do my best to be timely. I'm going to be I'm not going to do my best. I'm going to be timely with today's talk. And I'm going to also leave space for you to ask questions at the end. If you're willing to stay a little bit afterwards for me, I will stick around to answer questions. Okay. All right. So let's move on to that next slide. Okay. So we are going to do a fun little activity here shortly, but let me just kind of tie us into this. Let's move on to this next slide here. And who has seen, actually, I'm not able to see your chat. So I'm just going to assume that 50% of you have already seen this really incredible movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Michelle Yeoh won the Academy. Yeah, twice so far. I love that. It's awesome. Yeah, it's a really great movie. And if you haven't seen it, make time for it. It's a great movie and I highly recommend it. It is highly crazy. If you haven't seen the film yet, I don't expect you to know the film in order to be able to get through the rest of this talk today. So I do highly recommend it. Yes, but I want to be able to point out though that the main characters, Evelyn, her husband, Waymond and Joy, there is something very real and very relatable. And I love that it was an all Asian cast in this movie, because in that sense, it was able to tie in, even though it goes crazy with all the multiverse and different realities, it's also very poignant in that sense. And we can go all day and dig through, but the biggest thing that I saw that I took away from this is mental health exists in all aspects of our life. And being able to find satisfaction for this character, Evelyn, who runs a laundromat that's breaking down, and her husband feeling like they're lacking intimacy, lacking love, that it's no longer the same as when they first met, and wanting a divorce. These are all very real everyday situations that we may be facing. And at the end of the day, when you're going to bed, is there a sense of satisfaction? Is there a sense of love or joy or celebration or proudness that you feel? Because I can tell you very much, there's certain nights where I just said, why am I doing this right now? Can I change some of that, right? And so one of the things that the movie, you can change on to the next slide, that the movie made me think about is, if you have the same thoughts to lead to the same choices, which lead to the same behaviors, which lead to the same emotions, which will all lead to the same predictable future. It made me think about this quote from Joe Dispenza: same thoughts, same choices, same behaviors, same emotions. But when in reality, Evelyn was trying to create, she had all these choices every day, but she didn't take them. And so there's all these choices that show up in different parallel realities, right? So the more present we are in how we feel and how we're moving and how we function, the more we're conscious of our choices every day. And that starts to change the reality for you. So I'm going to ask for all of you to take a piece of paper out, blank piece of paper. And I should have mentioned this earlier. If you can find a blank piece of paper and start to just number it 1 through 8. And for 8, it's special because there's like 4 categories we're going to be going through. So 8 is 8A, B, C, and D. Okay. So I'm just going to give you about 10 seconds to find that piece of paper and number it. Ready, everyone? So thank you, Parag, for cueing that. Put in the chat box when you're ready. Say yes. So we just have an idea. If we can get a handful of people saying yes, then we'll get ready. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. I think that's enough for us to know. Thank you, Parag. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I'm going to, Parag's going to, don't change the screen yet, but you're going through number 1. You're going to rate your scale from a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being extremely dissatisfied, unhappy, to 10 being extremely satisfied. And this is, I want you to rate it in a level of satisfaction for the quality of different topics or categories that's going to come up relating to you. If it's not applicable to you, just simply put NA or just skip that number. You only have about 5 seconds for each category. Why I'm doing that is I don't want you to think too hard into it. Don't overthink it. Whatever number comes up, that's just the rating, and that's going to likely be your gut. feeling. Okay, so let's begin. And so 1, career. Put a scale of 1 to 10. Next, environmental enrichment. Put it on your blank sheet of paper. I know putting in chat is fun. Make sure you put it in your blank sheet of paper. Next, time management. Number 3, time management. Next, emotional health. Next, sleep and daily energy level. Next, nutrition. Next, number 7, spiritual connection and practice. Next, okay, 8A, social engagement, first topic, intimacy and romantic. Or romantic. Next, under social engagement, friends. Okay, 8C coming up next, parenting. If this is not applicable to you, just put NA. It could be for babies, who knows? All right, and next, 8D, last one. Community. Okay. So before we move on to the next part, take the last 4, which is 8A through 8D, and add those numbers up, then divide it by 4 or 3, depending on, you know, if parenting was true to you or intimacy was true to you. And you're going to get an average for that. So that's going to be social engagement. You'll get the whole list, Evelyn. So thanks for asking. I'll see you'll get the whole list in just a little bit in case. Okay. Just make sure that you don't go back and overthink it. So now that you have the average for social engagement, rated only 2 categories. Got it. You can go back and rate them again. We're going to the next slide, and you'll see all the categories here. All right. So what I'm going to have you do is on your blank sheet of paper, it is helpful to do this, is to draw 10 circles, just like this particular web here. It doesn't have to be pretty. No need to have that protractor or whatever it is to create. I will tell you that I have a tendency to want to do like, maybe I should print this out. I had messaged Jessica, should I print this out and have this also everybody has it pretty, but draw it. And then I want you to, just like this particular image here, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do this. Rate the numbers and put the dots that you rated yourself just now so that you can put a dot in each section. Once you've completed this, the first 3 people that say yes, I'll just take it that that's really generally where the people are like good and pace, then I'll know to move to the next section. I'm not seeing yeses yet, unless the chat's not showing up. So, okay, from Parag, can I get 2 more yeses? Or maybe just 1 more yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm just going to take it as a sign to move on. So the purpose of this exercise is to recognize that mental wellness is deeply interconnected in all facets of our lives. So let's just say that this whole encompasses your mental wellness here. And I actually put myself through this exercise as well too. And I drew it out and just one shot, didn't think about it, just kind of put it together. And this is really truly a snapshot about really just where my headspace was at too when I did this. So the purpose of this exercise is to recognize that mental wellness is deeply interconnected in all facets of our life. So imagine that this is your quality of mental wellness of where you're at right now, right? I was doing this late at night, so it could also be like a little bit more exhaustion that was kind of showing up in this. But it's also a representation that it's a continual dynamic relationship across the board that shifts based on phases or seasons of our lives, and based on external factors, personal beliefs and values, and how we respond to stressors outside of us too, and how we feel like we have control or feel aligned in our lives. So as you could see here, some areas feel like they're thriving. Some areas feel like that there's some areas for tweaks. So this is all very subjective, but it's a gentle reminder too, to be present with where we devote most of our energy we devote most of our energy. So I could see that for me, I devote a lot of energy to my social well-being right now. And also I put a lot of energy, I feel like, in everything else. What's also jumped out to me when I did this exercise was how much expectations I hold in myself. And so something that is very true to me is I love my career, and yet I rated myself a little bit kind of like midline, like nothing was really less than 5 or anything, but it felt like how much am I asking of myself in this season right now? Am I satisfied, or where's my energy? How am I utilizing my time in this area? So while I love being a chiropractor, I love being a yoga teacher, meditation instructor, why did I rate myself there? It's like, what am I asking myself that I feel like I'm not necessarily meeting? And is that realistic? So it's also this fun conversation to have about what are we asking in ourselves, what type of expectations that we have in ourselves. And it really asks us how to navigate through each of the areas too, to be more intuitive or reflective. I think I'm trying to think of the word, but and then also asking ourselves, can we simply be happy where we're at? Can we be accepting of where we're at as well too? That's the other factor. So this is also a fun little web to consider what actions we need to take in order to get to where we want. So the point of this web, like I said, is mental health is encompassing of all these different categories, if not more. I didn't add in financial as well, right? Didn't add in career, can dive a little bit deeper. It could be skills. It could be education. So this is always a very different moving web. I just happen to pick ones out that most commonly people rate as priorities, right? So let's move on to the next thing. So this leads to the next question though. We perceive all these outside categories as being important factors to mental health. And so we recognize that perhaps, hey, we could be exercising, we could be eating better, we could be maybe shifting and diving deeper into what type of hobbies would be fun. But where does all this begin? And as I mentioned before earlier in the talk, the answer is, you already know, it begins in the brain. And I want you to think about your brain as a very intelligent, nonlinear processing system. And a cadaver, what's the difference between a cadaver and us? What's the difference between a corpse and us? They have a brain, we have a brain. What's different is there's this life force, there's a spark that organizes and coordinates and helps us adapt to all life experiences moment to moment. And so let's move on to the next slide here. And mental health starts in the brain. I'm just going to highlight just the complexity that we sometimes take for granted because we don't see it. We see our face, we see our eyes, we see, our style and everything, but we don't necessarily realize just how amazing our brain is. So I'd like to take you through that trip here. So let's move on to the next slide here. In the most fundamental sense, what is the brain? And thus, who are we as conscious beings? It is, in fact, defined by a sprawling network of 100 billion neurons with at least 100 trillion connecting points or synapses. This isn't just one person. So 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion connecting points. I don't think we can even really fathom. I remember 6.23 moles to the 20th. No, the number, it's a lot, right? So let's move on to the next slide here. So just to kind of identify these pieces, there's no quiz at the end of this talk, so don't worry, I'm not going to test you on your cranial nerves and things like that, but I just want to illustrate just even a snapshot of understanding how complex our brains are at. Cranial nerves, for instance, this image illustrates that, just modulate sensory and motor responses, and it's these motor sensory responses are they related to your 5 senses. So the moment that you smell, maybe you're filtering essential oils, or you have a pair of stinky socks, like your ability to quickly process that happens, and it's the stimulation that helps you connect whether something is something that you want to reject or push away, or you want to bring in more of, that's going to help you feel good or help you thrive, right? So your ability to direct, or another example is your ability to direct your gaze from an article you've been reading to focusing on a colleague who's suddenly talking to you and it's upon them calling your name. So you quickly turn to them, your ability to do that in a matter of milliseconds. All this is this intricate connection of your senses, and there's these cranial nerves that simply just creating that conversation piece in just moments, right? Your ability to voice your ideas or express your emotions through your facial expressions. I don't know if have ever experienced Bell's palsy, but you get firsthand experience of not being able to move your muscles in a specific way, or if people have experienced even voice loss, or maybe they've had injury to their voice box, there's this significant things that we start to miss, and we realize that these are all coming back to the actual neurological function of the brain. The next system that we want to consider, and moving on to the next screen, is within these cranial nerves, this is amazing nerve that modern scientists are really interested in, called the vagus nerve, also known as this wandering nerve. And it's really truly a nerve that wanders from our brainstem to innervate our vital organs, our heart, our digestive system. And this controls our heart rate. It controls our digestive function, our communication there. It controls our immune system. The vagus nerve also innervates our voice box and innervates specific sensory aspects along our face, and all these different things that relate to healing of the body. So parasympathetic state is very much regulated by cranial nerve 10 and our ability to access that. So there's a lot of huge science, a lot of studies right now that's related to vagal stimulation. And this is just to, again, I want to be able to show you just a sample of this, but so much more that is encapsulated in our neurology. Moving on to the next screen. Functions of the cerebellum. This is part of the brain that sits in the base of your brain here. And just to kind of show you the different functions that take into consideration: movement, balance, coordination, emotional processing, thought integration. All this is also part and orchestrated from the cerebellum to the whole rest of your brain as well too, and your whole rest of your body. So this is, again, another slide to illustrate just the complexity in just one single region. If you can imagine, I'm only identifying these parts, but all these parts have to come together in a very synchronous way. And also at the same time, it's connecting to every gland, organ, and tissue in your body to orchestrate what's happening. That's quite complex and so amazing in that sense too. Next slide. So a lot of this is, the most basic 101 neurology to break down is your somatic nervous system, your autonomic nervous system. So all these functions that I just described can be categorized and can be modulated between these two states of your autonomic nervous system. And your autonomic nervous system is essentially things that you're not consciously aware of. So you may decide to pick up that warm cup of coffee and that bagel and cream cheese this morning. Now, how your body is actually assimilating that, eliminating, breaking that down, or how your body is metabolizing that, or how it's moving through your system, you don't consciously have to think about. And thank goodness, if you can imagine, we already have our emails to take care of, our to-do list, and then all of a sudden, oh, I have to remember to move my heart, or I have to remember to digest this food. We would be a wreck, and we wouldn't probably evolve at all. We wouldn't exist. So thank goodness for the autonomic nervous system, right? So there's two states to the autonomic nervous system. One is your parasympathetic, rest, digest, and heal state. And your sympathetic is your fight, flight, freeze, flee state. And essentially, these two states cannot exist at the same time. It's one or the other. And at its most basic evolutionary sense, it was created in order for us to be able to defend, to look for food, to hunt for food, to survive. And then at the same time, we use and expend a lot of energy. We also need to build up and heal and recover. And that's where the parasympathetic, the rest, digest, and heal state comes in. The problem is we are exposed to a whole lot more than our ancestors were. So let's just go ahead and this particular, you could see in this particular slide here, parasympathetic, that shows all the more restorative things that happen versus the sympathetic. And these are all necessary. Both are necessary systems. Let's move on to the next slide. And so this chart here illustrates how we need the perfect balance of stress in order to allow us to grow. So when we're exposed to stress, that's where we jump into that sympathetic state. When stress is removed, then we can start to better recover, right? So fundamentally, we need to engage in experiences that provide sensory, emotional, and intellectual arousal. Our brain functions and this is a really perfect example, and in a non-linear way, this beautiful curvature that shows that we thrive on stress that allows us to continue to build onto our resilience. Resilience is our ability to adapt, to be able to be resourceful. And without those type of stimulations, what you don't fire, it doesn't wire, then it starts to die off as well too. So we need stimulation. The problem is if we're exposed to too much, if we are putting ourselves in a distress zone, and that's going to start to go to the other direction where it creates fatigue, exhaustion, anxiety. So you think about good stress could be going to the gym and having a really great workout, and you feel more energized and more focused the rest of the day. The distress zone is you have a hard time unwinding until after your workout, and you continue and you go back. Your boss is yelling at you, or there's all these projects that you have to fulfill, and you don't rest, and your body doesn't necessarily have that time to be able to restore. Then you start to hit that burnout stage as well too. So rejuvenation is important, and our body, we can consciously do activities to help with restoring, but there's also looking at how your body is wired as well too. So let's look at 4 contributors of distress. We'll move into the next slide. And 4 contributors is physical trauma, toxins, technology. I put technology out there, and it's really how we utilize it. Being aware of how long we're in front of our screens, or if we're consciously, unconsciously picking up our phones and checking our emails in between. Like, are we giving ourselves a break with technology? Because emails, if we're checking emails every hour of the day, it's someone else's agenda, and that can create major stressors too. And that kind of falls into the category of thoughts. So think of it as a fire alarm with your nervous system. In your fight-flight state, that's where suddenly there's a fire alarm and you're alert, and you have to be able to quickly respond to that signal. And the problem with thoughts is, even though the fire alarm's turned off, we still think about, oh my gosh, I can't believe the fire alarm went on yesterday. Oh, I can't believe the fire alarm went on like a week ago. And every time you bring yourself back to those states, yes, That would be nice. So, but every time you bring yourself back to those states of recalling the event, or if you're already anticipating a project and how your colleagues going to respond to it, or I'm aware of this, so sometimes I'm like already anticipating how my husband's going to respond when I tell him that, you know, we made a date with someone that he's not so crazy about, or something like that. You know, I'm just making something up, but it's just the anticipation of already getting into a fight or arguing, or how someone's responding. That creates anxiety, and sometimes what that does is it already is creating this fight, flight, or sympathetic dominant state in our body, even though we're not physically actually in that situation. So there's a threat there. That's what our body's perceiving. So what happens is, you know, our bodies are very adaptive, and we put our energy all into this survival state. This is what I call a sympathetic dominant state, and it creates imbalance in our nervous system. And our bodies are very resourceful, and starts to delegate our energy in specific ways. And so in the next chart, I just want to be able to illustrate what this may look like. So up top, a balanced nervous system will look like you would have high energy, few to no symptoms whatsoever, such as chronic pain, digestive issues, gut issues, headaches, migraines, things like that, right? You're active, you're vibrant, you're present, and you also have a positive mental attitude, excellent health, you're mentally alert, you feel more aligned. This is the times when you may recall, you feel things are just falling into place and it feels good. The unbalanced nervous system, these are all just kind of the under-aroused, unstable, over-aroused. This is things that we use to break down through some of our technology. But just to give you some ideas that when you start to struggle with attention, when you start to struggle with depression, or you feel poor concentration, or you're experiencing regular headaches, or your chronic pain, or your sleep's being affected, or you wake up and you're just feeling tired and stiff rather than rested, it's telling us that these are the residual effects of an unbalanced nervous system. And if we continue for it to derail, the idea is longevity, and with healthy longevity. It's not just like, I want to live a long life, but it's, I want to live a long, healthy, independent life. And the goal, and if we continue to experience unbalanced nervous systems, the aspect is diabetes, depression, some autoimmune disorders, right? And part of it, yes, is genetic. There's another concept behind this, is epigenetics, is that your genetics get turned on based on the environment that you put yourself in. So part of taking care of ourselves in the outside categories that we talk about is you're creating a very support aligned environment for you to make sure that your body stays healthy, and perhaps even some of those genetic factors that take into place, you are decreasing the likelihood of those genes being expressed based on your environmental changes that you make outside. Does that make sense? And so I'm using Paragas and nodding to help me like confirm that I'm doing okay and good. So I want to be mindful of this. So next, we're going to go through to number 4, and I want to be able to show you just some things to dig deeper into and consider, right? So next slide. So when we're digging into some of the symptoms that you may experience with mental health, and that can look like sleep disorders, it could look like chronic pain, migraines and pain, or it may not necessarily show up as any symptoms, but there's this sense of something is off. As a brain-based practitioner, I combine chiropractic with neurorehabilitation and neural feedback to increase brain performance. And this is also a big part of supporting your active, healthy lifestyle. So next slide. So some of these factors that is unseen is really, we're going to dig into that. Does the brain see, or do your eyes see? If the brain sees, then you can only perceive reality based on what we have wired onto our brain. So the idea is your brain is really the eyes to what you're experiencing. So the next slide here is balance, taking into consideration your balance. This is just one of the scans that we do in the office, and it's basically it helps us be able to have a window of seeing spatial awareness, your vision, how your body helps you maintain balance, and your vestibular, which is your inner ear balance. We always think that balance is like, oh, I need to just strengthen my core, or I do yoga, or which all those are really supportive. However, underlying that is how your cerebellum is functioning, and we have specific ways to be able to measure that. And so seeing a chiropractor is very supportive. Getting regular adjustments is very supportive, because every time you're getting adjusted, you're also being able to shift your neurology. And especially if you find a chiropractor that that has that has a background in functional neurology, would be really supportive for overall wellness. But just something to consider is getting yourself involved in mind-body practices, Tai Chi, or being able to, or yoga or Pilates. Those are all really great mind-body practices that challenges your balance. If you want to dig deeper, we work with a lot of people with vertigo and dizziness that we have to go into the nitty-gritty to be able to address their weaknesses by identifying their weaknesses and strengthening those weaknesses. So one thing that you could try to do is, right now, is trying to stand up and balance on one leg. And then from there, as you're balancing on one leg, see if you can close your eyes, and depending on how long you're able to hold without feeling like you're falling over. So, ideally, you should be able to close your eyes, and people's balance, we see people's balance, and they could be 30 years old or 40 years old, and they have the balance of a 60-year-old. And that can play a role in their sense of mind-body connection as well, too. So when your balance is challenged, your vestibular system is challenged, vision is challenged, this is also going to give you the sense of less safety in your own body, and less connection and less awareness of how you're moving. So looking at balance in these ways is also a factor. Yes, as we get older, we definitely notice a difference. Next is looking at the next screen, is consider doing a brain scan, an EEG brain scan, brainwave scan. And this is really, really cool, because you get to consider really just how your brain's talking to each other, and it's the different regions of your brain, and it's really looking at brain waves. And so this particular page here, we're not going to get into it. This is another different topic for another day, but there's brainwave ratios, right? And the brainwave activities. Every activity, whether you're focusing or whether you're sleeping, should have some sort of healthy ratio to it. And when your body is not responding appropriately with specific tasks you're doing or recovery times, that's going to show up, and that's going to affect how well your body is truly accessing that parasympathetic, or that rest, digest, and heal state. So finding a person that does practice neurofeedback is another great way to be able to see, like, it's a way to pop open the hood and see how the operating system is functioning, essentially, right? This is really great if you're, you struggle with ADHD or sleep disorders, or if you kind of notice that you're struggling with focus, there may be something deeper, and being able to support that. Some things that you can do without necessarily digging deep into this, while it's really helpful too, because this helps to increase your peak performance, is improving your quality of sleep by cleaning up your sleep hygiene. So if you're looking at your screen or on your computer and then expect to fall asleep right away, maybe you may fall asleep, but you may not necessarily get those deep quality sleep, because your brain has been exposed to light for a strong period of time, a long period of time, and it needs time to be able to unwind, and so that may show up. So improving your sleep quality, meaning sleep routine, again, this is a totally different talk for another day. That's a really big thing. And then we also have passive brain entrainment technology nowadays too, which is really, really cool. Next slide is I want to be mindful about time. I'm like, oh man, 2:54. So another aspect is working with a functional neurologist or chiropractor who does brain-based work, is you should get your you could do different neurological evaluations. So checking your cranial nerves to see how they're truly firing, how they're truly talking. A really great field for finding the right chiropractor is someone that practices something called quantum neurology. And quantum neurology, it's really cool. They actually use muscle testing. They're able to identify any areas of weakness for the nervous system and imbalances, and other functional neurologists have some specific ways to identify function. Balance is one of them. They look at facial tone, muscle tone is another, and this is just one way to identify. So some things that you can do that everybody can do even without the assessment is gargling. So believe it or not, daily gargling to stimulate your gag reflex is a big deal. You could, why that happens is the afferent nerve, or the nerve that sends information to the brain, is cranial nerve 9, and then cranial nerve 10, which is your vagus nerve, innervates the motor function of your gag reflex. And so every time you're gargling, you're stimulating that vagus nerve as well too, which helps to up level that parasympathetic state. So daily gargling is something that we do recommend. So in our office, we do recommend weird exercises, but there's a reason behind it based on why how the nerves are innervating specific functions. The next is if you have an HRV type of technology, like an Oura ring, or that's able to track your HRV, that's another great way to be able to access. There's really great studies right now that show that your heart rate patterns also correlate to your mood, your attitude as well too. So fear and anxiety show up a lot differently. And also and then if happiness and joy shows up differently with your heart rate variability. So healthier people, happier people in general, right? And so next is I want to be able to introduce you to a challenge that's coming up that I'd like to invite you to. You could go to this link here. I'm going to just put it in chat, and yes, so www.wpoptimalliving.com. This is my website here. If you go to this website, on the very top, you can go to BrainTap, and BrainTap will take you to this particular link here. And you can read more about this brain entrainment type of device. And this is, you can use the app or you can use the headset. I'd like to give you more information about it, but I want to be mindful of time. But basically, it's a really cool technology that helps with supporting your cognitive health and your mood as well too. And this is one of those tools that we actually recommend to our clients while they're doing specific neurological rehabilitation in our office. But this is these are some things that they do outside. And so you can scroll through and get more information about it. It tells you different monthly subscriptions for just the app itself. The headset is very different. And the headset is basically this whole setup where it gives you a more deeper effect with the app itself. So with that said, I'd like to invite you, if you want to have more information about this, I'm just going through so fast. If you want to create a new personal reality, a new life, you must begin to examine your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors we've been living by and change them. So I hope that today just gives you some insight. Some of the things that you can do is, first of all, just look at where you're at right now and where your wheel of mental wellness is, and picking things that you can control and little changes you can make a little bit at a time. I'm always happy to be a resource, and obviously wish I can go a little bit deeper, but this is, if you want more details or just to stay in touch, I am doing a next 20-day brain-based challenge here. And this does include the BrainTap app as part of the challenge. So you just have to try it for 14 days or, try one of the for a month subscription. And we will do like a 9-minute Kundalini breathing exercise, BrainTap fitness app, all this good stuff. And then the next slide is, if you want to just stay in touch and want to go deeper into what that 28-day challenge is, you don't have to be in Colorado to do it. You can just simply text me, I'm in, or I may be in, I need more details. I'm happy to answer your questions and tell you a little bit more. We sped through that pretty quickly, but I just got excited with everything else. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But please do text me your full name, city and state, and email address if this is something you want to dig deeper into in terms of the 28-day challenge. And I can give you more information on it, and we can just go from there. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lynn.
Talk about time management and stress.
Lots and lots of information. So I know we're losing folks. Jessica, can you go ahead and fire up the feedback survey real quick? Additionally, there's 2 questions on this. Please answer both and then hit submit. Additionally, we are happy to announce our next webinar. It is on March 14th. Tuesday, March 14th at 4 p.m. Dr. Xinshen Zhao, former executive from ExxonMobil, will be talking about his book, Leadership Through Self-Discovery. Includes plenty of content and topics that are relevant to us as Asian professionals. Additionally, we've got our Women's Leadership Conference coming up at the end of April. It's a 2-day virtual conference. The early registration ends tomorrow. Registration is $250 for the two days. There'll be 4 tracks, 16 workshops, 8 different trainers, and we'll have a website up here shortly. But in the meantime, to take advantage of the early registration, Jessica will toss in the link into the chat just now. And we will go from there. So with that, follow us on LinkedIn. You'll also get an email before too long from Jessica with the link to be able to view this content. If you were wanting to view it again, we'll also include the links from Lynn in that recap email. And with that, thank you so much. For anyone who has any questions, you are welcome to go ahead and unmute and or toss it into the chat. But thank you again for your time today.